Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Michael Padilla, and today I want to take a few minutes to reflect on my journey in the Teacher Graduation Diploma Program here at St. Teresa University. Specifically, I will be sharing what I have learned from the subject of learning measurement and evaluation, how I felt before and after this program, and the difference it has made in my perspective as an educator. Along the way, I will highlight key insights from Krathwohl's hierarchy of the affective domain, because this framework has deeply shaped the way I now think about teaching, learning, and student development. It's affected the way that I've applied it at my job. It's affected my teaching effectiveness. And overall, I have had amazing reports from both my students and from my colleagues who have come to watch my class. And I've been able to explain to them a little bit more about Krathwohl's hierarchy of the affective domain, as well as other things that I learned earlier in TRSU, which includes the implementation of gamification, such as Bluecat, such as Kahoot, and such as other gamification games, such as just simple whiteboard games, but diversifying the gamification and making sure that it's essentially focused on more on learning and learning outcomes as opposed to just getting points in the game. So I will be reading off of a script I've prepared because I'm not very good at speaking off the cuff, so to speak. And I really wanted this video to highlight all of the points, not just the ones that I've learned this semester, but throughout the year. So, in part one of what I want to share about my journey through St. Teresa University, what I learned from learning measurement and evaluation class with Dr. Anberison. Before I began this program, my understanding of measurement in education was very limited. Like many teachers, I thought mostly about quizzes, tests, and grades. But through this subject, I have learned that measurement and evaluation are much more than numbers. They are tools that help us understand the whole student, not just what they know, but how they think, how they feel, and how they grow in their values, attitudes, and their behaviors. I came to understand that the affective domain is just as important as the cognitive and psychomotor domains. For example, a student may excel in academics, but if they do not learn empathy, respect, and responsibility, and emotional intelligence, then their education is incomplete. Learning measurement and evaluation opened my eyes to this reality. That teaching is not only about content delivery, but also about shaping character and nurturing human beings who can contribute positively to society. A good example of this at my school is we have once a week, every Friday, 1 hour of a class called Social Emotional Learning. We're using a program and a curriculum called Character Strong. We go through different points such as respect, responsibility, and many more. One for each month of the school year. The students are able to work through fun and engaging activities, including certain meditations, acting, role playing, and even just reflection activities about how they can treat one another with respect, how they can handle themselves with responsibility, and really just increasing the value of social emotional learning in the classroom and outside the classroom. The parents can also get involved through at-home assignments, although the homework is not required. We do try to tailor it to Thai culture so that it isn't all westernized, but a little bit of a mix since we're in an international school. So these are some of the things that we've applied due to my suggestions from St. Teresa's program, and specifically the class of learning, measurement, and evaluation with Dr. Anberison. The second thing I'd like to talk about today is the feelings before and after the diploma. As I come to the date of graduation, which is very soon, before starting this diploma, I have often felt uncertain and even a bit anxious as a teacher. I asked myself questions like, am I really making an impact? Do my students learn beyond just memorization? And how do I know if they are growing in values and attitudes? At times, I felt like I was only scratching the surface of what education should be. After completing my diploma, my mindset has completely changed. I feel confident, empowered, and deeply motivated. I now have both the theory and the tools to evaluate students in ways that are fair, holistic, and meaningful. I can see the difference not only in my professional growth, but also in the way I approach my classroom. Today, I no longer just look for correct answers, I look for curiosity, respect, engagement, and the willingness to learn. That is a big difference, and I credit this program for giving me that transformation. Another point I'd like to talk about is specifically about Krathwohl's hierarchy of the affective domain. This perhaps is one of the most effective implementations from learning from St. Teresa and applying it to my work with International Christian School Nantaburi. Krathwohl's hierarchy of the affective domain, one of the most powerful lessons I learned is the importance of this affective domain. Let me walk through each level because they reflect not only how my students grow, but also how they have grown as a learner and as a teacher during this diploma journey. My students have grown with me, and I have grown with them. Receiving is my first point, the willingness to attend. This is the foundation. It means being open, attentive, and willing to notice new ideas before the diploma. I realize I was in this stage, just receiving information, listening, and opening myself to new ways of thinking. For students, this stage is like simply paying attention in class when a teacher introduces respect for diversity. It may seem small, but willingness to listen is the seed of growth. The second point is responding. Active participation. The next level is responding when learners not only listen but actively participate during the program. I didn't just read the materials. I asked questions, engaged in discussions, and applied new strategies in my practice teaching. For example, instead of only learning about evaluation methods, I practiced using rubrics and reflective journals. This stage showed me that learning requires action, not just attention. Third, valuing, attaching worth. At this stage, learners begin to attach personal meaning and value to what they have learned. For me, I reached this stage when I realized that effective assessment was not just a theory, but something I believed in. I began to see fairness, empathy, and respect as essential values to uphold in the classroom. For example, I no longer see reflection journals as extra work. I see them as meaningful tools that show me my students' personal growth. That shift in belief was a turning point for me. Number 4, organizing and integrating values into a system. At this level, values are compared, prioritized, and organized into a consistent framework. Through this program, I learned to balance different teaching values: fairness, academic rigor, empathy, inclusion, and cultural sensitivity. For instance, I learned how to make decisions when students' values or behaviors conflict with academic expectations. I began to integrate these values into my own teaching philosophy, shaping a system where both academic achievement and personal growth matter equally. And lastly, characterizing. Consistent behavior reflecting values. The final stage is when values become a part of who you are, your consistent and repeatable behavior. After completing this diploma, I can confidently say that my teaching reflects these values consistently. I am more patient with students, more intentional in designing fair assessments, and more committed to nurturing the whole child. For example, I now consistently create classroom activities that encourage teamwork, empathy, and responsibility. Not just performance. This is where I see my transformation most clearly. What I learned is no longer just in my head. It is visible in my daily actions as a teacher. And finally, the difference in myself and my teaching. To conclude, I'd like to say this. So when I compare my feelings before and after this program, the difference is clear. Before, I felt uncertain, focused mostly on content and unaware of how to measure values and attitudes. But after, I feel equipped, confident, and passionate about creating classrooms that are both academically rigorous and emotionally supportive. I now see teaching as a balance between knowledge, skills, and values. The program taught me that true education is holistic. It touches the mind, the hands, and the heart. And through Krathwohl's hierarchy, I also learned that growth is a journey, one that starts with simple awareness and ends with consistent values driven action. And finally, in conclusion, the subject of learning, measurement, and evaluation has been one of the most transformative experiences in my diploma journey. It has changed how I see my students, how I see myself, and how I define success in education. I now know that true learning is not only measured in test scores, but in curiosity, respect, empathy, and the values that guide us beyond the classroom. Before this program, I was just a teacher delivering content. After this program, I am an educator committed to shaping both knowledge and character. I am deeply grateful to St. Teresa University, my professors, and my classmates for walking this journey with me. And most importantly, I am excited to take these lessons into my future classrooms, knowing that the real measure of education is the kind of people our students become. Thank you. This is Robert Michael Padilla, TRSU number 2435-12008. Again, 2435-12008. Thank you again.